Hey Spuddies, Potato McWhiskey here, and welcome back to Let's Play Imperator Rome. Huge thanks to Paradox Interactive for sponsoring this video. You can also check out the link at the top of the description of this video if you want to try out the game and check out the update for yourself. The game is having a free weekend from November 3rd all the way through till November 8th, I believe. Where we left off, we were dealing with a little bit of provincial loyalty. There's a few provinces that are a little bit disloyal. We also had quite a bit of aggressive expansion, and we spent a little bit of time building up, and we were going to get to work on our next mission tree. We have 3 missions to choose from. We have naval supremacy, the Iberian struggle, and entering Magna Graecia. I think Rome is already extremely weakened, so I'm going to kind of leave off entering Magna Graecia and give them a bit of a chance to recover, and instead we're going to go for the Iberian struggle and see if we can start to take out Spain. Go ahead and start the mission tree. So we have the Bellarides, and this is to do something with this. Let's see. Okay, so Gymnasia will get 50 opinion of me, and we'll get Punic integration, and we'll be able to integrate these guys much easier. Once we have them integrated, we will get Archer's discipline and Archer maintenance cost. That's very, very cool. So I suppose the first thing to do will be to improve opinion with this guys, and we'll also send them a gift, and once we have them ready, we will go ahead and integrate them. So it'll take about a year, and then we'll be able to integrate them. We also have the Iberian riches, which is the ability to get some claims over here in this area of the map. So we'll go ahead and get that started as well. And we also have the Contestanian hinterlands, which will give us a claim on this section of the map. So let's go ahead and get started on this. And now we also need to have Tartessia have an opinion of 25 or higher, and we'll be able to use these guys as allies. So let's go ahead and improve opinion with these guys. We'll also send them a gift and stuff like that. So it'll be a lot of just kind of like waiting for things to happen. Let's begin the integration of Gymnasia. It'll take just about 6 years to fully integrate them. We will get an integration boost once we finish this. Some of you rightly pointed out that I was making a bit of a mistake by constantly assigning very old dudes to governorships. So I'm going to go ahead and try to find someone who has like reasonably good skills, like this guy, Himilco. He has like okay skills, and he's very, very young, so he'll be in charge of this area for a very long time, and we won't have to change the policies in here as often. The cities over here are kind of starving a little bit, and one thing you can do to try to help out cities that are starving is actually shift more of the population over to slaves, because slaves actually eat a lot less food than other populations. You can see here 3 slaves are eating 0.3 food, whereas 2 tribesmen are eating 0.4. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and probably just slap in a ton of foundries in here, but first I have to get this province to be loyal, so that's going to take a little bit of time. And that's exactly why I spent a lot of time over here in this area developing all of these cities for having high population of slaves and stuff like that, to be able to just maximize the amount of cash that I make from here. You can see it's actually starting to make pretty good cash. Mainly the big thing now is getting this assimilation going. The unrest is a little bit of a problem, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem in the long run. As we convert more and more of the population, this unrest problem should get much easier to deal with. Brilliant. So we have a couple of claims over here that we can press in war to start taking over some of this region. The capital of this province over here is in Hippana. I'm going to move it over to Heraclea Minoa, because this is the city with the highest base population. And so that's where I'm going to put it, because this will add a multiplier, bringing this city up to even more population. I think it happens once the monthly tick happens. There you can see now it's up to 71 population. We're also going to do an investment here. I've already started it. We're doing an infrastructure spending. There's a lot of cities in this area, which means a single infrastructure investment into city infrastructure will give us a huge boost to like the output of these cities. And I'm also going to move some of the population from the sort of rural settlements, the slaves in particular, around, so that I can maximize how many people are in my cities, because urban pops, in my opinion, are a little bit more valuable. And it'll also allow me to build more buildings inside this city, further allowing me to, you know, sort of stack up the bonuses in here and produce a ton of resources. Basically what we do is just come into here, move pop here, and we want to look for provinces that have we want to move pops from places that aren't cities, right? And we can only move slaves, so we don't want to move slaves from other cities. So just going to try and grab every single slave that we can find that is not situated inside a city. We do, of course, want to be careful not to like leave no slaves in a place, but I'm pretty sure we'll be just fine. We're up to 50 population in this city now, so we should be able to build a lot more buildings. Also, a large percent of the population is now are slaves, and they will start to promote to freemen and citizens, which will improve my manpower and ability to research. I don't know if this is like the 100% correct way to play, but it's the way that I find like sort of rewarding to play, is to kind of just move as many pops as I can into one of my cities, then because if you imagine it this way, if I build a building in this city, the building affects a larger percentage or a larger amount of people. So that building is just more sort of worth it in terms of an investment. So there we have it. We have 2 mills queued up, another tax office, and another aqueduct to give us even more population. Actually, probably another aqueduct doesn't make sense. And I'll just get another tax office. What I want to do is try to maximize how many slaves are in this city, and then also maximize the output of those slaves. Because if you imagine, if I can get more slaves, and those slaves are happier, which is what this building does, and then multiply their output, it can result in massive amounts of gold. I think for right now, though, it's probably not worth it to build this many tax offices in here until I have this province converted into the right culture. So I think I will just build like a ton of mills to maximize the percentage of the population that are slaves, and then maximize their happiness. And then later on, we'll maybe look into maximizing their output. So with all that said and done, I basically deleted every building except for the fort, because I don't want it to be able to be sieged down instantly and like take all of my people, to a different country, and then we'll just max out the total number of mills. We'll come back, we'll take like a snapshot of this. It's 1.62 production with a 29% slave population ratio, and once we finished all the mills, that should see that number significantly jump. We managed to make Tartessia be friendly with us, so we'll go ahead and click this. This will take a little bit of time, but they'll gain some opinion with us. Eventually the goal is to turn them into an ally, because this will give us some more bonuses in here. So I need to make them an ally, and I need to guarantee their independence, and I need to get them 150 happiness. So I'm going to offer a guarantee, and then I'll see if I can get an alliance with them. There is the alliance as well. Apparently I can't click the alliance button. That's a little bit weird. Oh, why can't I click the alliance button? That is a little bit odd. Maybe I've encountered some kind of very weird edge case bug. I can offer an alliance to these guys, maybe because I guaranteed them first. So I revoked the guarantee, then I offered them an alliance, and then is this met? Okay, so it's either a guarantee or an alliance. Got it. I'm also going to go ahead and pick up an invention here. This is siege engineers. I'm currently fabricating a bunch of claims over here in this area so that we can expand more aggressively and not take as much aggressive expansion. We're going to grab sappers here, which will help us sieging down things. Oh, I think getting material science would be huge too. An army weight modifier of minus 10% means we'll have a lot less food problems. Holy crap, I can have up to 20 buildings in my capital. I had no idea that my capital was this ridiculous. I guess I did like give it a lot of city buildings. Now my capital wants to have as many citizens as possible, so this can be like a research production center. It has a massive population limit. Maybe I'll slap in another aqueduct, because right now our research ratio is a little bit weak. So if I can get my capital to be extremely highly populated and have a massive amount of research output, then we don't really have to worry so much about our ability to generate research, because it'll basically carry every other city in our empire. Okay, so it's time to get the war declared. We're going to be going up against Bastentia, Ditania and Mastia. So the war has begun. We're already sieging down some of these port provinces, and there's quite a few little armies running around, although I think my armies are strong enough to not worry about it too much. I'm also going to be taking quite a lot of slaves in this war, at least that is the hope. I should have, like, where's my horse stacks? I forget. Didn't I have a little horseman stack? I did. Let's go ahead and see if I can get them over here, because they're just nice to be able to occupy things, right? Oh dear, there is well, let's see. Maybe we'll be able to win. We are going to be the attacker in bad terrain. This is a -1 penalty, and they do have a general advantage. But we are doing shock against skirmishing, and it looks like, at least at the opener, we got a much better engagement. So at least the very first few days. Okay, now we're getting completely crushed. We just keep an eye on it and see what happens. Okay, we're taking way too many casualties, so I'm going to go ahead and just retreat, and we'll come back to fight this another day. My tyranny is very, very high at the moment, so I'm kind of tempted to try to lower that, because it is hurting my loyalty. Although it is giving me assimilation speed and stuff, but the primary culture happiness is pretty painful. So I'll probably just go ahead and try to lower our tyranny a little bit. Oh my sweet Jesus Christ, who the hell decided now was the time to start sawing things? Oh my God, this is unbelievable. I have only a few hours today to actually get this video made. Oh no. Hopefully whoever decided to start sawing has subsided and subsisted and stopped, and we can get to work on... Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm being attacked over here again. Hopefully whoever was doing all of that sawing has decided to stop. Yikes, that is a lot of troops. Now, I do have a lot of archers, but I don't think war elephants are really that great. I definitely should be using more light cavalry in my armies. That's why I'm going to be bringing these guys over. I might even start like recruiting a bit of extra light cavalry here. We might win this one. Nah, we're not winning it. The -1 penalty is a bit rough. So we'll just go fall back to here. I guess we'll have to merge our armies together and use them in conjunction. I was thinking I was strong enough to just kind of split up and do whatever I wanted. But I don't quite have the economic power to just kind of mass up my armies and also still have money left over to actually develop my cities. Speaking of developing my cities, my capital wants to be developed in particular towards producing more citizens. Now, right now, my citizens are essentially perfectly happy. There's a couple of citizens here and there who are not perfectly happy, but I don't actually need the happiness from libraries anymore. But I do still want to increase the ratio of citizens in this city, because the more citizens I have, the more output I get from the academy. So right now, if I get another library, it'll increase the ratio by not that much, but I think it's still worth it. Is it still worth it? I might just be better off slamming in more academies and then trying to centralize a huge amount of population into this city. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to kind of continue along the path that I've been going, where I go for a mixture of aqueducts, granaries, libraries, and academies. And I think this city is big enough now that it justifies a second fort. I think, you know, if this city got sieged down, it would be incredibly painful for me. A huge amount of my population will get enslaved. Oh, nice. It is the year 500, and we've hit the warm period, which will give us, for 10 years, 2.5% population growth across our entire kingdom. That is an awful lot of population growth, to the point where a population is going to grow like, I think it basically, I did the maths, right? It's 2.5 times 120, and then you divide that by 100. So it basically says every single province in my empire is going to grow 3 extra population over the next few years as a result of this. Okay, so I threw both of my armies in here. It's still looking pretty scary. This guy seems to be using skirmishing stance a lot. I might have to change what I'm using. All right, so we just barely won this fight by the skin of our teeth. It was actually far closer than I would hope, but it is good enough now to where I would feel pretty comfortable that I will be able to win this siege and continue taking this territory. I definitely feel like your nation doesn't get like overwhelmingly incredibly powerful as fast as it did in the base game. There's definitely more, it feels like there's a little bit more work involved. So now I'm just running around with this cavalry, picking up as many slaves as I can. There is the very first fortress to fall, and we can start. I think I want to knock these 2 smaller nations out of the war now. If I can get these guys knocked out, it'll be a much easier time taking the rest of the territory. This is a bit of a weird battle. I think they might have accidentally marched into me, because I don't think the 7,000 troops are going to take my 20,000. There goes the siege of Mastia. We did pick up 4 pops and have been sent all over our empire. This is one of the big advantages of being in one of these wars, is that you can just fill your coffers up. You also see here that when I click on my capital, you can see people are moving to my capital from basically all over my empire. Oh, nice. We can pick up the rights of man now, which will give us a 5% boost to our national slave output. Right now we're making 60.75 tax, and that jumps up to 63.07. So that's going to make sure that like we just have that little bit of extra cash, because our economy is way more efficient. That is this war more or less handled. We're going to take about 12 aggressive expansion, which is a decent amount, but not too much, and we'll get a nice chunk of land. I don't think it'll quite finish off our mission, but it will get us close to being able to do things like the Slinger port, for example, and the Mines of Iberia. The really cool thing here, the Mines of Iberia is going to lower the slaves needed for a local surplus, so we're definitely going to be taking that one. I also need to do the Silver port. This is going to require me to found 2 new cities in Choba and Zalda, and then I need to click this button, and then until the end of the game we get a major migration attraction, huge local tax. So this will be a great place to actually set up a bunch of slave ports as well. This city of Carthage would be an amazing slave city, because it's going to have a massive boost to its taxation, and slaves are how you produce tax. This mission here, a new Carthage, we need to hold 8 or more territories with city status in the regions of Baetica and Constantia. If we go to the region, you can see here that is this area or this region and this region. So I need to just do a little bit more conquering, found a couple more cities, and then we'll be able to do the new Carthage. Also, I have the Tartessian allies, which will give me a boost to my unrest and tribesman happiness, which is quite useful. Right Right now we're just doing a little bit of peacetime. I want to let my aggressive expansion bleed away for just a year or two, and I'm also going to start working on some claims. I have a couple of claims, but for example, I would like to maybe get another claim on these guys, for example. Unfortunately, I already have claims on them and I can't claim on them anymore. So I'm just going to set up a few claims, and once our claims are done, we'll get expanding. We just want to try to think of aggressive expansion like a currency that's kind of limiting our ability to expand. We want to spend as much time at peace as possible, so we want our wars to be faster, and we want to make sure we're only taking territory that's claimed so that we get less aggressive expansion, which will result in us being able to expand more often. And the reason for this is because aggressive expansion really upsets the wrong culture in your empire. So if I come into, let's see if I can find a place that doesn't have my culture. Like, for example, this Masurian area. There's actually a large amount of unrest here, 1.78 from unhappy pops. Now, I do have an army that's acting as sort of a local police force that's kind of lowering the unhappiness, but the unhappiness in here is very relevant because if there's unrest, it'll slow your assimilation. And you can see here, there's a huge difference between the happiness of a megalithic tribesman who is my culture, Punic, versus one who isn't. In fact, it's almost a 43% difference, right? These tribesmen are way happier, which means they generate a lot less unrest. So we want to keep the aggressive expansion down low so that more population can assimilate to me. Well, I guess I misread this actually. Any of these cities can be true. I think I might want to turn them all into cities though, because looking at this, it seems like if they are all a city, then they will all get the benefit of the local unrest and local tax. So where is Choba and Zalda? Looks like Choba is all the way down here. Let's go ahead and turn this into a city so that we can start to get extra benefits. I'm kind of testing this. I don't know if it's true, but we'll find out. I think I'm going to go ahead and implement the anti-piracy statutes so that I can start to clear out piracy from the local area, because it's just annoying having to build forts in every port or to suffer the wrath of the pirates. I've gone through these cities in Sicily and made some changes to them. This city over here is trying to maximize the total amount of slaves that I have. Eventually we will kind of build it up to be a little bit more optimized perfectly for producing as much gold. And the reason why I'm optimizing for how many slaves is, again, because slaves use less food, right? So that means I can have a much higher population. There's a lot of cities in here. If I had these as all citizen cities, we would have a very hard time feeding this, right? So by making it we have a ton of cities all in one place, so we make them, essentially slave cities so that we can produce a lot of gold out of them without having to feed it much food. So I've gone through here to this one. I'm going to try to maximize total gold output, but in these other 4 cities, what I've gone and done is built up more mills that'll increase the percentage of the population that are slaves. And I've also built some granaries, which will increase the total food capacity of this area, thus resulting in more growth, which means eventually there's a lot of food provinces in here. In fact, there's 3 as far as I can tell. 4, sorry. There's a livestock, a grain, a vegetable, and a grain. And if we can get enough slaves into these provinces, eventually they'll produce more food so that we can sustain an even higher population and just go absolutely wild in the total amount of gold that this area will produce. It's already producing 4.18 gold, which is a significant amount. It's also producing a ton of commerce value because it's exporting so much gold. Exporting so much stuff to other areas. All right, so this is where we get to see the fruits of our labor. We just turned Zalda into a city. Now, do these also get the benefit? It actually doesn't look like they do. Only these 3 cities get the boost, which is fine, but that does mean that we are going to want to turn these into maximized gold value because they have that local tax modifier, which means they can get a lot more out of slaves than other cities. I really want to declare war on these guys. However, Tartessia is guaranteeing them, so I need to look for one of their allies that I can maybe safely declare war on. For example, like these guys right here. They have the wrong allies. That's unfortunate. Now, these guys, for example, in Mantanzania are allied to the people I want to go to war with, but they're not guaranteed by my ally, which means this whole war will be a lot easier. We are going to be up against a significant army here. Probably would have been a good idea to increase the size of my army before this war, but we're about ready to go. So I figure now is the time to pull the trigger. So the most important thing here is that I'd like to grab this section of the map and then just as much as other stuff as I can. I don't think I'm going to worry about the stuff over here. I'm far more interested in trying to unify the region of Baetica. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm sure, again, I'll be crucified no matter how I pronounce it. While my main armies siege down these forts, I'm going to use my horseman army to run around and again, just siege down as much stuff as possible to take as many slaves as possible. not only hurt their economies, but boost my own. The war is going quite well so far. We've occupied a significant portion of the territory. My ally is kind of struggling a little bit over here. But we've managed to take about 17 slaves. The majority of the slaves that have been taken by my enemies have actually been from my allies, so I don't mind that so much. We also have picked up a new military tradition. I'm going to go ahead and pick up light cavalry cost. That'll mean that I can field a much larger army. And I do plan to start using a significant amount of cavalry because they seem to be quite good against the majority of the units these guys use. You can see they use a lot of heavy cavalry, light infantry, and these guys actually do quite well against heavy cavalry and light infantry. It's not amazing, but when you consider something like, for example, light infantry against heavy cavalry, it's a lot worse because I think heavy cavalry has a massive, massive combat bonus against stuff. Yeah, you can look here. It's like a 25%. The only thing heavy cavalry don't do great against are horse archers, heavy infantry, and heavy cavalry. So the fact that light cavalry only have a small negative, it means they can do quite well. But everything else they're using, for example, light infantry, skirmishers, and the light cavalry, like these guys are going to go pound for pound pretty effectively. Like I was talking about earlier, these cities over here are starting to starve, and it's because they have huge, they don't have huge populations, but the majority of their population are like freemen and citizens eat like an ungodly amount of food. You can see here we only have 5 citizens, but they're eating 1.5 food in total, whereas you compare that to 5 slaves that are only eating 0.5. So citizens eat almost 3 times as much food. In fact, it is 3 times as much food as slaves. So by building a bunch of foundries in here, we'll make the food problems in this region become a little bit easier to deal with. The reason being is that a higher percentage of the population will prefer to be slaves, which should result in needing less food. Nice, we managed to pick up another martial advance, and the really cool thing about this martial advance is, sure, we get the normal benefits of, like, for example, morale of armies, all that stuff, but this one has galley slaves, which will lower the maintenance cost of our navies, and our navies aren't, you know, super expensive right now. I have them on low maintenance, so they're only about half the normal price. But this will mean we can field an even larger navy. More importantly, we get this +5 discipline right here, which is essentially like a 5% combat bonus across all of our armies, which again will make future wars faster. And since you don't get aggressive expansion decay at the normal level you do when you're in an offensive war, if your armies do more damage, you can effectively be in war for less percentage of the time, meaning you get more aggressive expansion decay, meaning you can go to war more often. I hope I said all that correctly. My brain I feel like I said some of that wrong, but basically, faster wars means more aggressive expansion decay. Also just picked up a very nice civic advance here, which is going to give us a little bit of population capacity, which again should help make our cities bigger. We also got some national commerce income. More importantly, we get these nice boosts in here. We're going to want all 3 of these. We want the national commerce income. We want the national citizen output. That'll increase our technology ratio. Right now, again, our technology ratio is pretty bad. And we'll also get a build cost discount, which over the course of the game will actually result in a significant amount of gold in our pockets. I think the first one I'm going to take is the state harbour fees, so that we can start to get just a little bit more cash from our commerce. Speaking of commerce, I really should go through every province. This is something I've been kind of neglecting, and just make sure everywhere is importing goods that can import goods. This will get easier once we're producing massive surpluses. Even though like internal trade routes aren't worth as much, it's still money that you're kind of just leaving on the table. Sweet, we got another religious advance as well, which gives us slightly stronger omen power. These aren't so good in comparison to some of the other inventions, but they're still pretty reasonable. Oratory advances, on the other hand, are far more important because they give you civilization level, which a lot of really important things actually are tied to civilization level. If I come over to my capital, for example, and click on it, you can see here, civilization level gives you supply limit, population capacity, it gives you migration attraction, it improves the happiness of your citizens and freemen, but it does decrease the happiness of your tribesmen. And having high civilization is just really, really valuable because, again, it lets you have higher population. It lets you, you think people are just more efficient if they live in a high civilization society. We do have a little bit of a food problem in our capital area, though. We are currently negative on food, which means we'll probably want to go through here and build up our food output in these other sort of rural areas. I kind of held this off until this place was starving. But in particular, building stuff like farming settlements gives us a 50% local food modifier, or if we're building a slave estate, that'll also give us a food modifier. And I like to have a lot of food in my areas because I like to grow really, really big population centers. And in fact, there's actually a really cool map mode for population. If we come over here, we can click on this, and you can kind of see like the bright green spots are high population areas. So you can see here, Carthage is like extremely bright. So you can almost tell just by glancing at this map mode where the cities are and where the high population density centers are. Right-eo, let's take a moment. I have only one more fortress to take, so we'll quickly get that squared away. We have essentially won this war. We're up to 35 enslaved population, and we can start claiming a whole bunch of land for ourselves. 21 aggressive expansion is quite a lot. I'm not sure if I want to take that much this early. So I might drop some of these claims. In particular, I'm going to take like the cheap stuff to take, but I might avoid taking things that I don't have claims on, because the less aggressive expansion I have, the more often I can go to war, right? So that's kind of my logic behind it. To speed things up, I'm going to go ahead and spend some manpower here to fast assault these places. I only have about 1,000 troops in it, and we have about 20,000 outside that will assault. Didn't quite pull that off, that's fine. So what we do now is we just pull you off, and then we throw another stack at it, because we have plenty of manpower. So basically we're trading manpower to get the war to end a couple months sooner, rather than having to siege down this fort for ages. So we traded about 20,000 manpower to finish the war immediately. So that's about 14 aggressive expansion, which I think is a pretty acceptable amount. I might even give a little bit of land to my ally here, just so that more of it is under control, since I won't actually directly take the aggressive expansion. And then I'm pretty happy with how this outcome is right now, right? And we also get an opportunity to kill off a few of the sort of ruling families of the nations that we conquer, which will weirdly lower your aggressive expansion, which I'm not really sure about the logic about that one, but we'll just take it for what it is. So right now we're sitting at about 20 aggressive expansion, which means we probably want to chill for just a couple of years to let that tick down to around 15 or so, and kind of spread a few more claims around. We have truces with only a couple of bordering neighbors, so maybe I'll get a claim over here, for example. Get a bunch of claims on this local area. I might even do a couple of small wars to, for example, clear up these guys. They're already in a war with Sedentania. If we take a moment to take a look at the ledger here, we can actually see I'm now the third largest nation in terms of population on the map, but I'm only like, I'm also the third largest in terms of number of territories. In terms of manpower, I'm second, although I imagine Egypt is probably not too far behind. I do have the second largest army in the world. I have the second largest navy in the world. This is very, very cool. We can also see by rulers and provinces. Oh, this is cool. I didn't actually know about this. So you can like see which provinces have the most citizens, which places have the most slaves. There's 145 slaves in my capital region. One thing that actually might be worth doing is if we want to lower the food consumption of this area so that it grows faster, what I might do is I might actually start moving slaves out of these cities and into the sort of local area so that they'll produce extra goods, and then that'll go on to result in more of the population of the cities demoting down to slaves, and then I can move them out into the rural areas, which will result in a higher number of goods being produced, because if I get 10 slaves on this province, for example, we'll produce another vegetable. And that'll result in another external trade route, which will again produce more commerce. So I actually might try that angle of approach. So for example, over here in the livestock area, right now we have 4 slaves in here producing a single livestock. So I'm going to go ahead and have a look around to all the large cities and move in a bunch of slaves here until we have about 20. As you can see, now we have 20 slaves in this province of Mittestraton. My god, these names are so hard to say. But because we have 20 slaves in here, and we have the farming settlement, which reduces the number of slaves needed to make a local surplus, we're actually producing 3 sheep here. And then if I unpause time, I'll get probably a few trade requests for that sheep. No, apparently I just got barbarians causing me issues. Okay, here we go. This is what I was talking about. So these guys are now going to be requesting that. So this place right here. we have a huge number of slaves producing goods, right? And when I accept these trade deals, the commerce income of this area is going to go up massively, which is really, really cool. So I think it actually might be better to, instead of trying to centralize into my cities in Sicily, it might be better to move people out into the boonies, because if we go look at this city now, because I built a whole bunch of foundries, a huge number of the population in here is going to start demoting into slaves, which means in the end, we're going to end up like making way more money and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be the goal, is moving slaves into these rural areas. And again, we moved another bunch of slaves over here so that we have 20. So we're producing 3 vegetable surpluses. Now, I think that does result in us not producing as many of these things like salt and stone and wine, but I think these trade goods, like the population is way more efficient at producing goods out in the sort of rural areas. Now, in terms of missions, I do need one more city over in this area, and I think I'll just pop a city down on one of these places. This place is already producing wine, so it's probably a good candidate for a city. I just need like a little bit of cash. You can see the trade requests rolling in to purchase my vegetable surplus from over here. And now this city is making nearly 5 ducats a month just from commerce. So I definitely feel like this was a way more efficient way to do things, was to move people out into the sort of rural areas and spam a whole bunch of trade routes. I have 24 slaves in this area producing 4 units of grain. And now we just have to go ahead and sell them off. Jesus, that's nearly $6 dues a month from just selling off goods in this area alone. Definitely, I feel like this is the right way to do things. And now we have massive sort of rural populations producing goods for us, which is really, really cool. The downside is now most of these cities don't have a ton of slaves anymore, but the cool thing is they're going to start demoting some of these less useful population into slaves so that we can produce even more goods and make even more money, which we can then use to feed and develop our capital area to have it be like a research hub. I really like this whole, like, I love the, like, you can kind of just like, you know, phone it in and do whatever you want and just like build a mixture of all cities, but I'm really enjoying this sort of like micromanagement that you can do to like create these incredibly efficient setups, whereby, you know, just for about 1,000 ducats, I've turned this area into an absolute powerhouse for goods production and trade. And the other really cool thing is this place actually gets huge benefits from trade routes in terms of population capacity, if I remember correctly. There are some other benefits that I don't remember what you get from trade. God, I wish I could remember it off the top of my head. I'd love to set up a place to have a bunch of freemen, just to have like a ridiculous amount of manpower. Just converted Iberia over into a city, so we should be able to do the new Carthage. First, we got to do the Punic intervention, which means I need to conquer basically this entire area here. I don't quite have enough claims on this local area, but my plan was to declare war on these guys right here, because they're allied to a bunch of like smaller nations around here that I'll be able to kind of gobble up. And then that'll lead into sort of conquering the rest of this section. Time to get this war started. I have this guy surrounded by 3 different armies, and then I have another army over here to kind of hold off the other allies. Let's go ahead and get it going. We actually managed to stack wipe them. Oh, no, here they are. I thought I stack wiped them. I was like, wait, their army disappeared. No, they're hiding over here. A little bit confused about how these like retreating armies are able to just walk through my forts, no problemo. I think that's something that should maybe be changed. I don't think you should be allowed just like retreat through forts. Oh dear, this looks like a very unique event chain here. A prominent lawmaker assassinated on January 3rd. Carthaginian Shapath was brutally murdered after an important senatorial debate. Let's see, and has a fierce advocate for the rights of foreign minorities in Carthage, going as so far as to propose the formal extension of citizen to all free men within the Carthaginian borders. This rhetoric angered many conservative senators who were desperate to conserve the ancient status quo with no clear successor to the ideology, blah, 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 blah. So basically this guy was like an advocate for foreign people, people of the wrong culture. So we have the option here to every province without Punic as a dominant culture, 8 provinces will receive the following effect. They'll lose loyalty and they'll gain a huge amount of unrest. That's really painful. That will almost certainly lead to a rebellion. Or we can pass a bill giving us 5% wrong culture group happiness until the end of the game, but this may plunge me into a civil war. Let's click the button and see what happens. Okay, I don't see a civil war, so I'm feeling pretty good about that choice. Oh dear. The Senate is issuing an ultimatum. On behalf of the large Senate majority, Bodo Voltaire-Reno has delivered an ultimatum demanding the immediate revocation of all bills passed during our recent sitting on the legislation formerly known as the Hanid reforms. In addition to the revocation, the rebellious parties have demanded reinstitution of various land tithes which were abolished many centuries ago. Bodo ended his monologue with a worrisome reference to the support of not only senators but much of our military hierarchy as well. So we can lose the effect of support of minorities, giving us wrong culture group happiness. So we lose that wrong culture groups and we get a 10% tax debuff for 50 years, or we can gain a bunch of stability and increase the chance of a civil war. Let's go down the civil war route. Hell yeah. The Senate calls for aid. In uproar at our inability to address concerns over the Hanid reforms, the Senate has formally called upon the aid of troops loyal to the spirit of Carthage. Messengers were sent in the dead of night to all generals in the hope they would rally the troops and march against it. So looks like a few generals here have decided rebel perhaps. So this guy is in control of this army. This guy is in control of this army. Oh sweet Jesus, these armies just appeared. Okay, so I do have a chance to like maybe deal with these guys. Now what I can do is I could bring this guy to trial. I could also bribe and grant him a holding. But right now he has the senatorial champion modifier, which means he is currently raising a massive army against me. These are actually ridiculously huge armies, and they're also heavy infantry. Now, this might be a meme. This might be a really, really dumb thing to do. But I could put the armies on boats and then like disband the boats and the armies might disappear. I want to see if it works. So I don't think I'm going to be able to make these guys loyal. So my best bet is to start recruiting armies. That is my best bet, and probably the best thing to go up against this mixture of troops is like pure cavalry armies. Anyway, I think now is a good time to get out of this war, so I'm going to reset and suggest and just take like little chunks of land to fill up my coffers. They won't take this piece just yet. I wonder if I can white piece out their friends. No, I won't be able to do that for a year. Well, we have a civil war on the cards. Right now, there's not much of a risk of civil war, but we do need to get that handled. So that's why I'm building up a massive cavalry army. We waited long enough and now they will accept my peace. I'll even get a little tiny chunk of land up here. Sure, why not? About 7 aggressive expansion, which isn't awful. And we also killed 3 different nations, which will allow us to bleed off 1.5 aggressive expansion immediately. We could, of course, take popularity. My guy's already 100% popular. So we're just going to take the aggressive expansion decay and wait a little bit for that to tick down again. I'm kind of scared to declare war until I know exactly what's going to go down, because there's this whole civil war thing looming over me and I'm not really sure what I should do. That's why I've been stockpiling gold, I've been stockpiling manpower, political influence, trying to keep my stability high and not get too much aggressive expansion, because I don't know what these guys are going to do. I assumed this was supposed to maybe trigger some kind of civil war, but it was basically just like massively free armies that I can use. Nothing has happened for a while, so I'm starting to feel like I might be okay to just go ahead and declare war. And in particular, I want to go ahead and declare war on these guys right here in Mantasania, because they are allied with 2 of the people that I need to take out. So I want to declare war on these guys, take them out over here. And I also want to declare war on one of the guys over here. I think it's these guys, because they're allied to 2 of the people I need to go to war with as well. The Gizgoid reforms. The plight of the downtrodden has long been debated in regards to the Carthaginian military. Our policy of exclusion outside of times of great need has resulted in other nations forging ahead of us in military matters. We have received word that great reforms have taken place in Tanagra, driven by bipartisan force of the elite and common folk alike, resulting in sweeping changes to the very nature of the Tanagran military. Umash Tart Gisco, possessed of a keen military mind, argues that we might benefit from adopting similar approach. Cool, so this is like the Marian reforms, but for Carthage, which is really, really neat. Maybe, am I talking about the Marian reforms? I can't remember. So we would lose 40 loyalty on this guy. The aristocracy would be relieved for 10 years, which would give us to 25% national citizen output. but we would be able to select this military modernization thing, which gives us 20% manpower recovery speed and 5% discipline, which is quite nice. And considering now that we're making like a ridiculous amount of money, this military army maintenance cost is probably not as important as it used to be. Or we can swing in here and we actually instantaneously institute the military modernization. My general gains 20 loyalty. I gain aggressive expansion, but I just don't have to pay to like institute the law. I don't know if I'm ready for that, because if I take a moment to look at my economy here, this would be a pretty big increase in the cost of my army right now. I'm not sure I'm ready to eat that cost. The aristocratic dismay is painful, especially with the national unrest. Yeah, I think I'm just going to say the cost is simply too great for now, and then I'll implement those reforms at a later date. Like, I would actually much prefer to just click the button than to have it go through the event, because then I don't get the negative penalties and I can kind of choose when it happens. So we have here traditional observance. This is actually a law that I've been looking at to change. Right now, all we get is state religion happiness, which is fine, but I think either a like cheaper stability, although I don't like the populist influence. I like the idea of pop conversion speed, because I believe if we take a moment to look at the religious map mode, we're following the Canaanite religion, and a lot of our population isn't. So if we could swing up and plug in the population conversion speed, that would over time result in more of the population inside our empire actually following our religion. Because if we go up here and have a look at our religious breakdown, only 51% of our population actually follows our religion. And so if we, like, for example, swing in down to just a random province like this one here, you can see it takes a very, very long time for them to convert. And if we could get a multiplier applied to that, it would significantly increase that. And the reason we want to convert people is because if we look at this citizen, which is not my culture and not my religion, he only has an 8% happiness. Whereas the citizen that is my religion is far, far, far happier. And not only that, but if you can convert people to your religion, they much more easily convert to your culture, and vice versa. If you convert someone to your religion, they convert to your culture faster. And if you convert someone to your culture, they convert to your religion faster. So if we can kind of get that working in a roundabout way, it actually results in more of our population converting to our culture as well. So with that in mind, I think we're going to go ahead and deny the priests in the Senate to get ourselves that nice population conversion speed. That will hurt our stability, but I think that's worthwhile in the long run. Just gobbled up another chunk of territory here in southern Spain. I spent a bit of time doing a bit of micromanaging in Sicily again, and now we're making nearly 7 gold per month from this region just purely from trade. Well, I say, yeah, just purely from trade, like just having a sickening amount of trade goods. That's because I moved all of this population into the rural areas. And these sort of urban pops are slowly converting back down to slaves, which I will then move out into the final 2. I think there's 2 more places that I could fit a few more slaves into. Yeah, I bet the population density area of this, or the population density map of this area is going to look really weird. Like, yeah, you could see like... it should look like this, where like the outer regions are kind of like a darker color, and then the sort of city regions are a bright color, whereas this one, we've definitely turned it into a more of a rural production powerhouse. For a bit of fun, I thought it would be interesting to turn this sort of section of the map, this entire province, into like a massive manpower production area, just to see like really how much manpower we can get out of a single place. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically get rid of all the forts and build the barracks building. And what this does is it can basically makes it desirable for freemen to live in the area, as opposed to producing lots of food. Instead, we'll be using this to produce lots of freemen. So we'll put a barracks on every single tile, and then we'll make sure to come back to check on this at a later date. And also in the actual city, what I will do is build training camps. Let me see here if I can find what I want to do. Time for another military idea, and we're actually picking up the cavalry skirmish wild charge ability, which is pretty cool because I actually have quite a few armies that are going to be able to make advantage of this. You can see these guys here. They're, for the most part, mostly made of cavalry. And the cool thing about this is it counters bottleneck. Although I don't see a lot of the AI using bottleneck. I think deception just seems to work better because they tend to use skirmishing quite a lot, but they don't tend to use envelopment all that often. In any case, I have access to cavalry skirmish, although this does have, it seems, some pretty powerful things. But the problem is that skirmishing counters it, and the AI likes to use skirmishing a lot. I would like to use this because it has like such high modifiers, but I think the AI just relies on skirmishing and deception too much for me to play this. More importantly, this leads on towards army attrition reduction, which means our armies can stay out longer at war without having to suffer major food penalties. At long last, I'll be able to get rid of some of these armies. These have been expensive problems for me. That civil war that I managed to avoid, these guys are costing me nearly 14 ducats a month. In fact, I was nearly negative money, and I had to do a little bit of like chopping and changing to try and save my economy. But I think it's about time we got rid of these guys to actually get a nice clean win. But we will be able to take like huge chunks of land here without too much aggressive expansion, so I'm looking forward to that. I just need to get like a just basically this siege finished, and then we're good to go. Also, we are pretty close to picking up one of the really cool inventions here, the army maintenance cost. It's going to be a 10% army maintenance reduction, which would stack really nicely with our current laws. And I don't think I really need the discipline, so I think I will save up and pop that in there, and that'll save us quite a bit of cash, which means we'll be able to do more economic investment. Managed to grab about 17 slaves in this war, which isn't really that many, but still a fairly decent amount, right? Let me go ahead and just clean up this fort to the north. I don't know how many people are in the fort. It looks like it's 1,000, so it'd probably cost this is going to be an expensive siege. I might just take like the quick peace and take all this land, because getting out of the war is really nice. So let's go ahead and just take all this chunks of land, get rid of all that aggressive expansion, and now we have all the chunks of land that we need. We are very close to securing Baetica. I just need to get these guys to accept demand tribute, which is going to be tough because I did upset them with a bit of aggressive expansion. But if I can get their opinion just another like 40 points higher, which I am doing improved relations with them, I should be able to get them to demand tribute, which I think will sort of secure this. It's either that or we are going to have to go to war with our former allies. Rome has actually managed to expand a little bit, but I basically crippled them by taking this bite out of them very early on into the game, which I'm very happy about, because we've been able to safely and just slowly expand however and wherever we wanted. I've also been colonizing along the sort of African coast here to eventually get over towards Egypt and their subjects and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure they have this as a subject. No, they're just trading with them. But yeah, eventually we are going to come into contact with Egypt as an entity. That's going to be an absolute rip-roaring war that is going to involve an awful lot of supply wagons and murder. Go ahead and grab ourselves paymasters. We're paying about 82 ducats per month for our army, so once we grab this we can check out and see that we are now paying about 74.5 ducats, which is pretty damn nice. It might even be worth it to kind of go full eco mode for a little bit while I wait for some of these claims, and I would make nearly what, like nearly 100 ducats a month? Yeah, nearly 75 ducats a month, which is a crazy amount of money. I spent a little bit of time reworking the trade routes in my capital, because this province was starting to starve. So I imported a little bit of vegetables, and I imported a little bit of livestock. I also cancelled a whole bunch of the trade routes that we did way earlier in the game, so that we can stack up a bunch of these capital surpluses. I'm working on local import routes. That'll take a little bit of time. To be able to get another one. I'll be able to maybe find another trade good that I can stack a capital bonus. So right now we have the vegetable bonus, which is giving us a 20% move slave cost modifier across our entire country. We're also getting like cavalry discipline. We're getting pop promotion speed, national slave happiness. We're getting a 10% build cost reduction across the entire empire. I can't believe I didn't have that one enabled for like the entire game. We also got national citizen happiness, ship recruit speed, not so important, army maintenance cost, wine is a big deal. This should have been something I should have paid a lot more attention to if I wanted to be way more efficient. I really should have looked through here for particular things that would really help out. For example, if I could get my hands on precious metals in my capital, that would give me a 10% population assimilation speed. So let's see if we can actually find some of those. North Africa does not have many precious resources, but this expansion that we've done into Spain does in fact have some precious metals. And in fact, this city right here has quite a few precious metals. So what we could do is move a whole bunch of slaves into this city. The problem is that they would slowly convert to other classes and then we would lose the bonus, right? So far better to do is to find a rural province build a mine improvement, and then stuff a whole bunch of like 20 slaves in here. And then once we have 2 fully completed trade routes in the capital, we'll be able to import precious metals twice and crank out a ton of population assimilation. The other one I'd really like to get my hands on is the furs here. This would allow me to have a higher level of experience than all my troops. Right now, I'm not doing that because I'm saving up cash to try to do economic investments across my empire. But having that experience decay would be really, really nice to build up our military experience really fast. I thought it would be a bit of fun to see what would happen if I just spammed aqueducts in a single city. And the interesting thing here is that the migration attraction of a city is actually dependent on the available population capacity, or at least somewhat dependent upon that. So by doing this, you can see here, if I click on the population button, you can see people are migrating to this city from all over my empire. So this is kind of an interesting way to kind of get people to migrate to where you want them. Build a city with a ton of aqueducts and people will come live there. You can also see that this is where I built up a lot of these barracks where my freemen are going to act as just kind of manpower sources, right? So if I look through here, you can see I'm getting about 1,000 to 2,000 manpower per each one of these little provinces, which is pretty neat as far as an experiment goes. I don't think it comes anywhere near as effective as a city. Like this single city is producing me about 3,000, but I think if you are like really needing manpower and you have like a province you don't care about, just slap down a ton of these barracks and then you'll be able to much more freely sort of assault fortresses. And actually, speaking of assaulting fortresses, I really do need to build up an army that is specifically designed to assault fortresses. That was kind of the main objective here. So let's go ahead and get the war declared. Ba-bam. I'm not actually going to call my allies into this. I only allied them so that I didn't have to deal with them being annoying and sort of supporting other people. At this point, I'm also going to merge some of these armies together for a very important reason. And that's mainly because each general costs you 2.5% of your nation's income. So if I can have larger armies attached to sort of one general, I actually overall spend less gold. Gobble gobble, time to eat up the first tiny member of this war and save ourselves a bit of aggressive expansion. So that's first guy down. We do have 3 more to go. These 2 guys will be easy. This guy will take just a while just because he has so many forts to siege down. While we're in the war, we may as well quickly move another 10 slaves over to this place so that we can get the final copy of precious metals that we need to secure the population assimilation speed bonus. Now there is a bit of a problem in that this place is a little bit overpopulated. That'll become less of a problem over time, as our civilization value increases, as a bunch of other stuff happens. These guys are just going to deal with the fact that they're going to be a little bit unhappy from the overpopulation until these tribesmen move out. It'll hurt their population growth as well. But once these tribesmen move out, that'll be much easier. And if I can get some more civilization value in the local area too, that'll help out significantly as well. And if I can get a bunch of trade routes in this area too, that'll kind of alleviate the problem as well. Anyway, like I said, let's go ahead and import those precious metals into my capital, thus giving us a very nice 10% population assimilation speed. So if I come in here, let's see if I can find somewhere where we're actually doing some assimilation. We have a surplus of precious metals and an export of precious metals, giving us a 15% boost to the assimilation speed, which is kind of countering the fact that this isn't a Canaanite religion. So we're only suffering half the normal penalty, which is really, really nice, right? So that means more and more of the population is actually converting over to our culture. In fact, if I click on this button, you can see, if you remember earlier on in the video, quite a lot of this area was brown, but you can see now the majority population is starting to convert over to my population. And the same sort of thing can be said for the religion. You can start to see there's little pockets of my religion appearing as people convert over, even over here in Sicily. Sicily took a very, very long time to switch to my religion. I've also completely neglected, colonizing up here, which is something I could have done a very long time ago. Well, I have a bad habit of forgetting to do that, clicking the colonization button. I'm sure there's probably like a few provinces over here too that I could colonize at some point in the near future. Yeah, like here. And I guess if I move, I guess I could manually colonize all this, but I'm just not too worried about this land in here. I'm far more focused on getting this war done. And here we go. That's right, however the hell you pronounce you, Mantasania. It is time for you to be gobbled up by the Carthaginian Empire. And then the very last guy that I need to talk to is the Bastentia. My god, the amount of pop-ups you get in this game, by the way, is a little bit crazy. Especially when you're playing on like a high speed. Probably is a good time to have a look around the map, and my god, the border gore that Imperator offers is second to none. Have a look at this. Right, Moria is still pretty much the same. Still quite a little bit of fragmentation over here. Bactria is still going strong. Parnia is a bit of a superpower over in this area. The Seleucid Empire still exists, albeit barely. Phrygia seems to have kind of risen from the ashes and survived a little bit. Thrace is still going strong. Macedon has completely pooped the bed as far as I can tell. Thrace is doing okay. There's a couple of these small tribal nations that are starting to look a little bit stronger. Looks like Getia is still around. Places like this, Laodicea, like they're looking pretty good. I guess they're only like a regional power, but still they could be something meaningful over here. Then we've got Lugia up here in North Germany, who's looking pretty strong. Pictonia in France and Sutronia in southern France are both looking pretty strong. Nobody's really kind of taken hold in Britain or in Ireland. There's a couple of these guys that look a little bit bigger than when they started, but still very, very infighty. Now, Teutonia, that's an interesting one. These guys could be a contender to sort of form a proto-Germany. In fact, where's their capital? I'm curious. Do they have like special bonuses in their capital? Because that means they formed a nation. I can't seem to find their capital, but they do not have any research whatsoever. These guys are purely migratory. So now it is time for peace. Can I grab all of this land? It's going to be expensive in terms of aggressive expansion, but grabbing this huge chunk of land is really going to significantly boost just how powerful I am and how much of the map kind of follows my color. So I threatened war against this nation right here because they have a tiny one piece of land that I need. And apparently, I am at war with an awful lot of people. I guess it's an opportunity for me to maybe grab a little bit of land again. So let's grab all these guys and get them moving up to the north. So apparently, a Teutonic man has appeared upon our borders from Teutonia, who I was talking about a minute ago. And he's going to give us claims on all of that land, which is kind of wild to me that we have claims all the way up here. I don't even know how I would get up there at this stage of the game. I'm curious, is there a way for me to create vassals to be able to manage these lands a little bit easier? I see here. I can create client states out of my governorships, which is pretty cool. I don't know if that's really what I want to do right now, but I might create some client states in certain areas just so I don't have to manage all this land directly. I think managing the land directly is like, really, really efficient in some respects, but in other respects, for example, these guys are just absorbing a massive amount of my income. So it might be a way for me to actually get an effectively larger army without having to actually, manage this all directly and pay the generals. At least until I figure out a way to maybe like pay less for my generals. I need to like, I don't know, get a leader or job cost reduction, because like the monthly character wages are pretty hefty at this stage of the game. Now that we're like a relatively large empire, it might be better to look into sort of managing it with client state. So unfortunately, this piece of territory that I was using to generate precious metals had a absolutely ridiculously huge slave revolt, which means my capital is no longer importing, or at least this should update like at the end of the month and no longer be importing, right? But apparently, somehow, I'm still importing from here, even though there's no extra gold being produced, which is a bit wild. In any case, I think this time I'm going to spread the slaves out a little bit so they don't revolt out of just pure, like, unadulterated rage, which is totally justified, considering I packed them into a province like sardines with no regard to their desires or happiness. Right, so I've more or less won this war. I'm just going to take a little bit of the cheapest things that I can find and get a nibble on. I don't want to take more than like 7 aggressive expansion. So 9 is about pushing the limit. So I'll take 9 aggressive expansion. I'm out of the war. And at long last, I'm able to click the Punic intervention here. Good God, it took me so long to get this mission done. But now I can just basically do all of the other ones, right? They're all ready to go. The only one I need to do is to get Tartessia to accept my demand for tribute, which I kind of forgot to do. We're very, very, very close to... Excuse me. Hello. Go away. Oh, just have them flogged. We're very, very close to being able to get these guys to accept our tribute. We just need a few more months of friendship and they'll take it. Ideally, they would be a client state, but it seems very hard to actually get anyone to accept the client state status unless they're tiny. Like, for example, these guys. Now, you can see their rank is -10, whereas these guys, their rank is -30. God, we're so close. I just can't get that last little bit of improvement. I'm trying to think about how I could do it. A little bit of diplomatic reputation might help. Yeah, no, I'm just not going to be able to do securing Baetica, but we can do protecting the Iberian heartland, which will give us a couple of bonuses, as well as the new Carthage. Now, I could create a sub-state that owns all of the sort of southern territory in Spain. That would mean we wouldn't need to go and secure this by that route. And instead, yeah, I think I might do the Rise of Carthagonova, maybe, but I gotta wait for more of these provinces to sort of have my dominant culture. Either that, or I could just build a city and kind of like cheat my way into it, which seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do as well. Regardless, we have to sit around for a little bit here, but I've been playing this for nearly 4 hours now, and I think that's going to be it for this episode. Didn't quite manage to get this mission finished, but this definitely gave me sort of direction. I kind of went off on my own tangent as well a little bit, and I had a lot of fun kind of building up territory and stuff. In particular, I had a lot of fun messing around with Sicily and getting the commerce income in here up to a like ridiculous number. Although it looks like it's fallen down a little bit. The population in here is starting to climb and climb and climb, and I assume that's because these cities are getting some migration, right? They should be. Apparently they're not getting that much. This city is getting a significant amount, but most of these cities are not getting that much migration. Now, I'm actually curious. I want to check on this city too over here. My God, it's already at 51 population from all the migration that's being like sucked in using the aqueduct. It's an interesting idea to like siphon a huge amount of people over here. What I might do, should I create some client states over here? I'm going to create a client state on the Horn of Africa here. Not the Horn of Africa, like the tip of it. The tip of Morocco. So we will release this as a client state. And now it kind of does its own thing, right? And I don't think client states... Oh, it does. They do use a military or a diplomatic slot. So I'm curious, what do they owe me now that they are my client? Do they pay me something? They have all my tech. So what does the actual relationship with them do? What does a client state owe me is my curiosity here. So it looks like Tinga pays me cash. And by not having to directly manage this population that was in existence here, I don't have to do quite as much. I'm kind of tempted to turn the entire region of Mauritania into a client state. Is there an easy way to like, can I be like, hey, you, have some land. Oh, please don't tell me I have to do it individually. Can I just give them all my land over here? Oh, damn it. Well, screw that plan. I'll just have a tiny little client state right here. It's just fine. Although I do have this client state right here as well. It's a feudatory. I don't remember where it came from. Apparently it's just like popped into existence. But I'm kind of tempted to give them this full area as well. Yeah, either way, that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Imperator Rome. And I hope you guys check out the free weekend for the game. I love you all very much. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.